Welcome to Sport Media and Tech. I am your host, Keel Blake. On this episode, special guest Mark Hotchkin and I spend time with three very dynamic digital leaders. I couldn't be more pleased to introduce to you three professionals, but not only professionals, three personal friends. We've all identified that actually everyone on this call met each other the same year in 2013. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Kara Baker, the Director of Digital Partnership and Operations at the Golf Channel. How are you doing tonight?
Good, really good. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, happy to have you. And
2013 was a good year, Keel.
It was. 13 was a great year. We also have Eric DeSalvo. He's the Assistant AD of Hashtag Content at UCF, the UCF Knights. Go Knights!
Charge on.
So, love it. So welcome, Eric. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Gil. Appreciate it. And can't wait to talk about some sports.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and last but not least, we have Joey Nelson. So Joey is the digital marketing manager with Adidas. He works a lot with basketball. He's in Portland, Oregon. So thank you so much for joining us all the way from the West Coast, bud.
Absolutely. Thanks, Keel, for putting this all together and excited to chat with the group.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, one of the things that I really wanted to focus on in this podcast is we have 65 students that just learned that due to the current situations that the rest of the semester is going to be online. So they're going to not have as much interaction as typically they would. And so we wanted as a program to reach out to industry professionals to hold panels, talk about specific discussion topics, and give an opportunity for the students to hear from people that have walked the path that they're trying to walk after graduation. So appreciate the three of you being here. And with that, I want to ask you, how did you get your start in the sport business industry? What was that got you started?
Yeah, so for me, I was an athlete growing up. I started as a swimmer and then turned golfer when I realized that my chance of playing collegiate golf was definitely a little higher, and swimming laps in the pool got old after a while. You're looking at the same pool, the same flip turn, and so golf became a little bit more interesting. And so I never dreamed, though, that a collegiate golfer would turn into something in the sports industry. I had a graphic design degree. I went into the nonprofit sector shortly after college and then switched gears. And I really think the biggest reason why is because the Golf Channel and Golf Now are in Orlando. Mm-hmm. So fate kind of had its way with location. And I hopped on board to an incredible company that is just absolutely amazing in the way that they support their staff and leadership and culture and all things sports, leading the way from a golf perspective, media. And so I really hit the jackpot. And now, being in the sports industry and being in sports media, it really is a really unique niche. And I love getting to know more people within the industry. And I definitely am looking at the horizon on kind of what's to come within the sports media industry and just sticking my path out on this, as it's a really, really cool place to be.
Absolutely.
I got my start playing T-ball, got stuck in right field, and you know what happens when you get stuck in right field? It means you're no good. So playing sports were my forte. I loved sports. And when I was in high school, I had that dream of, like, someday I'm going to be on Sports Center as an anchor. And then you get to college and you learn, like, the radio TV programs, like, not the easiest. And then you find out, okay, you're going to have to ship me off to somewhere in the middle of the country probably to get my start. All right, I'll look at another profession. And thankfully, my dad, here when I was at UCF grad himself, mm-hmm. and had some connections. And I met someone from the athletics communications staff. Mm-hmm. And it was a couple of weeks before the UCF Texas game that opened up Bright House Network Stadium in 2007. And Joe Hornstein is his name. And he said, mm-hmm. Hey, would you like to help us out in the press box? I was like, yes, that sounds amazing. And I handed out stats and turned it into a job where I interned for my senior year, got a graduate assistantship at Northern Arizona University in athletics communications and promoted their track and cross country programs, which were their best programs. Came back to UCF full time in 2011, and it's just did athletics communications for 2 years with baseball, volleyball primarily, and used social media to promote those sports since they don't get a whole lot of love in mainstream media. And those abilities helped me to take over for Keel when Keel moved on. And so it being in that driver's seat of UCF athletics on social media right now is like it's a dream come true. I've always wanted to know how I could serve my alma mater, and I feel like I've been doing it for a while now and in such a unique position to do it too. It's really cool.
Well, Eric, you are an incredible storyteller. You know how to engage people. It's been awesome to see what you've been able to build out with UCF's content. It really, I might be biased being an alumni as well. I think we all were influenced in a big way in 2007 with the first UCF on-campus home game. We were playing actually Mark Hotchkiss.
I remember that game.
Yeah, and we
you were sweat, weren't you, Mark?
Yeah. So, but with that in mind, you know, I won't forget that game either. I was actually painted up head to toe with a cape on, you know, in the first or second row. Yeah, and but anyhow, with that said, Eric, it's been great to see your journey and what you've been able to accomplish for the department. So glad to have you here.
Appreciate it.
It's always great to, you know, to hear these stories and how folks got their start. Yeah, so currently reside in Portland, Oregon. I've been out here for the last 5 years, but you know, an Orlando native, born and raised. You know, my dad growing up always brainwashed my little brother and I and our family to be UCF fans, to be Bucks fans. You know, always dropping the sports section off, you know, while I'm eating cereal, getting ready for school. And you know, for me, that kind of sparked a passion and a desire to want to be a sports writer. And you know, any chance I got in middle school or high school, whether it was a poetry class, using, you know, radio calls, you know, as the inspiration, or writing an essay on Kevin Smith, a former UCF running back, you know, should he stay in college or should he go to the NFL? You know, that's what I always loved to do. And, you know, my start in the sports industry started in a really, you know, unique and interesting way and kind of an unexpected way. I had to write a leadership essay for my UCF college application, and I wrote it on then head coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Raheem Morris. And a chance meeting with the Bucs offensive coordinator, probably 5-6 months later, you know, we started talking about the team, talking about leadership, talking about the Bucs, and told him about the paper, and that essay made its way into the hands of head coach Raheem Morris. And they invited myself, my little brother, and my family down to a practice. This is in 2011. I had, you know, just graduated high school, you know, was excited to be at UCF, and never could have imagined that, you know, this one essay led to a conversation that led to, you know, a meeting with the guy that I wrote about. And I had the opportunity to meet with their PR staff, and they offered me a game day position, you know, to work for them. And, you know, similar to Eric's experience, you know, up in the press box, passing out stats, interacting and engaging with media, you know, was such a great learning experience for me. And then that opened up the door to work with the UCF Athletics Communications Department. You know, Doug Richards was kind of my mentor at the time, and kind of introduced me to the team, and got to learn a lot. And Eric was on that team as well, and he was one of my bosses, and had the chance to, you know, bring our student athlete stories to life, you know, but also doing the kind of the grit and the grind and the dirty work, you know, updating stats and bios, and you know, being on the ground for events. And it was really a great, you know, a really amazing and great experience for me. And then that took me, you know, about 3,000 miles away from home out to Portland, Oregon, you know, where I've been supporting our Adidas basketball brand communications team, primarily on the public relations and digital marketing side. So yeah, that's kind of the long story of how I got my start in sport communications.
Yeah. Well,
that's great stuff. Yeah. Thanks for those answers. Really interesting. You know, I agree with Joey. It's neat to hear how people kind of got their start, and y'all mentioned some of the people that have inspired you as you go through this process, but kind of wondering if you could give some advice on the skill sets that you think got you where you are today. What would you advise folks who are looking to follow a similar track? Which skills should they invest in, and which ones do you think are most important?
So I think the biggest thing, I mean, whether it's sports or nonprofit or e-commerce, whatever you decide to go on, you know, there's definitely some key characteristics that just make you a successful in your professional career. And, you know, I think that one of the biggest things, going back to, you know, either whether we are all athletes or wanted to be good athletes, Eric, sorry for your right field position, but is just tenacity and dedication. And I know that was a big thing, you know, when I was growing up as a swimmer, I had practice every single day. And my parents just were like, you got to go. You committed and you said you were going to go and you said you wanted to swim. And it wasn't like you know, they're pushing me too hard. It was, they were teaching me something. They were teaching me what determination was and discipline was. And for me, I think that's carried through and through, that it's like when I have a job in front of me, it's whatever I have to do to get it done. And now you just start folding in other characteristics and other qualities, and then other, like, you know, management skills and leadership skills, and you begin to kind of just evolve in your professional growth, basically. And but I think the biggest thing would just be like a willingness to say yes and finding a way to get it done, and just being disciplined throughout all of that.
Yeah, those are all perfect qualities. I would add on to that, on top of those, and say persistence is huge. I know in our professions, people see them and they're like, I want to do what they do. That sounds awesome. And then they reach out to you, and then, like, you know, maybe we get bogged down and we don't get to see that email that came through or whatnot. And then they never reach out again and might not have a chance to pursue that, like an internship or something like that. But those who are persistent in this area will break through. The squeaky mouse gets to the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Is that what they say? I don't know. That sounds cool.
There you go.
But it's true though, because if you're reaching out and you're not being too aggressive, but you're being persistent in a good way, it's going to show that you have the want to, and that goes a long way in these industries.
Absolutely.
Definitely agree with that, Eric. And I think just continue to build off of what the team's already shared. I think two big things for me, you know, the first would be just the willingness to listen and learn. You know, as someone with a writing background, you know, we're used to the red pen, folks making edits, and you can't get your feelings hurt. You know, you have to be open. You have to be open to things like that. And, you know, along the way, you may not, you know, hear the answer that, you know, that you're looking for, or you may get a no when you're looking for a yes, you know, for a certain opportunity, but just continuing to listen and learn, I think, you know, is so important to me. And then the second, whether you want to call it a family first or a team first mentality, I think that's just so important to have. You know, it's not necessarily about, you know, stand at the top of the mountain and look down on other folks. It's, you know, how do you look each other eye to eye, and just being open to sacrifice, and again, to listen and do the little things. So I think those are the two most important things to me, I believe.
With that in mind, you know, right now, all three of you have experienced ups and downs in your career, right? And right now, you know, our entire industry is experiencing a pretty big, you know, just a pretty big pause. And I wouldn't call it a low point, because it's been amazing to see how people are working together, and how we're you know, tackling this as an industry, and seeing where this is going to go. But how is you know, the coronavirus right now impacting your organizations?
Yeah, so for myself, I oversee the digital product builds for PGA Championship events. There's actually 4 PGA Championship events, but the one that most people on this call and students would know would be the PGA Championship, which is one of 4 majors in the golf industry. And if you didn't get the news already, it is 24 hours old. The PGA Championship has been postponed. And so, you know, I think coronavirus is just 100% turning the golf industry upside down, and it affects specifically my world. And so, you know, when you're looking at product launches and releases and just major builds and testing and so many different things that go into a major kind of tournament app and website, and then it's pushed pause or it's pushed delayed. Now what you're looking at is you're looking at this one of the biggest, most important things is to make sure that your team is in a good place, because that can be a little bit of a disappointer, a downer. Like we just spent a lot of nights, some all-nighters have already been pulled right now to get to where we are. And we just were told it's getting postponed. But then there's also a sigh of relief that comes out of that, because you're like, well, what else can we do now? Like, what are the opportunities? You know, there was, in the product world, you don't get to say yes to everything. So you make a list and you make a backlog. And in that backlog, you know, you say maybe next year. And, you know, we have the 2021 list. And so now we get a chance to say, how much of this 2021 list can we do now? And so it's a really cool way of balancing like the disappointment, the reset, and then the how can we make this even better. But I think that one of the most important things right now is just, again, team morale and staying adaptable and just being responsive. You know, at the end of the day, my role, my team's role is, we all have in our title digital partnerships, and partnerships is the key word. And our partners are the PGA of America and the European Tour. And so when they need something, they're responding to the crisis, like we need to be there and available for them more than anything.
Absolutely. It's a great point. Great points, Kara.
I would say how it's affecting me is, unfortunately, I'm sure you've got some students in there that I work with on a daily basis. Some of our student athletes are in this class, and for all of our student athletes, especially those in their spring sports, for it to come to a close like that, especially when so many of our teams were on pace to have record-setting years with baseball, softball, men's, women's tennis, rowing, who knows, with track and field and all those, our golf teams, like they were rolling, and to see it come to a halt like that is tough. And then on top of it, you've got our team who supports those teams, and we're told, you know, all those promotions and ideas you had for games and content ideas around those events themselves are also canceled to a sense. Like that's tough. And then everyone going and working remotely. So it's a mind shift now. I think I've talked to a couple of counterparts in this industry that are at other athletic departments. And I think people are calling each other like, hey, is it cool to post now? And what is kind of tone are you going with right now? And it's, you got to have some sensitivity to the times. Absolutely. You just can't go out, because I think right now a lot of people are gearing up and they're formulating plans, because everyone's content's going to look different without events based around them. But guess what? We also have those ideas in mind. Like Kara was saying, that you could do for next year for things. Well, these are the things that, like, off the field stuff that we don't normally get to do. Now we're going to be able to focus on them. Now we're going to be able to hopefully deepen our relationships with our fans and share more of the stories of our student athletes in a different way than just their abilities on or off the field. So it's affecting us. But it's also showing us, like, have tact, have patience, and then when things look good, you know, move forward, charge on, I should say.
Yeah, Eric, I mean, it's definitely, I think for all of us, you know, it's been a crazy time, and similar to, you know, for the UCF team, you know, this hits close to home for us as well, out in Portland. You know, one of our signature athletes, Donovan Mitchell, you know, guard for the Utah Jazz, he tested positive for coronavirus last week. And, you know, for the Adidas team, like, we have been in the thick of our campaign plans for Donovan and his upcoming shoe launch in July. It'll be his second signature product coming out from the brand in partnership with Donovan. And, you know, we had a photo shoot planned in early April that's now been, you know, pulled off the table. And I think for us, it's, you know, how do you pivot? You know, how do you look forward? And for us, I think thankfully, you know, with Donovan, there are some really exciting collaborations that we have in the mix, you know, so with Marvel and with Crayola, you know, it allows our teams to pivot creatively and lean more into illustration, whether that be comic style or crayon style. And, you know, so having fun with that. Thankfully, we got some, you know, some great creative folks on our side that are working on those plans, you know, as we speak. So, it's, yeah, like I said, it's definitely been a crazy time. And like, you know, Kara and Eric mentioned, you know, we're all working from home and working remote, you know, having to be collaborative in different ways. And I think we all understand, especially the class, you know, we understand how important discussion is, whether that's before class, after class, during class. So I think we're all kind of adjusting right now, and building off Eric's last point, you have to be patient. I think, working with Adidas, where we are product driven, I think it might take a little bit of time before we're ready to start promoting our products again. And we're trying to find ways to support our athletes, and to promote, healthy living and sport, within a home. So we're working on some things right now that we're excited about, but again, just requires patience and flexibility.
Mm-hmm. All three of you bring up just really great points about how this is impacting, your day-to-day and decision-making and how some things are missed, but then other things are creating opportunities. And, I spoke with each of you today over the phone, and, big topic of our conversations, we're thinking about all the people that are being impacted financially and just how, we really want to work together as an industry because we want, just our global society to be safe, healthy, or to get well soon. And that's where it's been really encouraging. And each of you kind of shared as we were talking on the phone, it's been encouraging to see people step up and help each other out in this industry. And so I will share, one example is this podcast in reaction to not being able to have in-person class. It's been overwhelming, the response of people that are willing to take time out and do this. So thank you so much for sharing a little bit about that. And but I've just been really excited and inspired by the response of the global sport community in terms of how we're making decisions to overcome this current challenge.
Yeah, I think it's always how we react to things like this, right? I mean, we have no control over something as huge. There's certainly no playbook for what's going on. I think what I'm hearing from this group, is what it's like to be a real professional, is that there's going to be challenges, there's going to be things you can't control, but there's going to be some things that come out of it that, we'll probably look back at and say that, that was one of our better ideas. And it was because it was an unparalleled situation that we were thrust in. We obviously didn't want it. We wouldn't want to have to go through it again, but, it forced us to think differently, think outside the box. And I'm a big proponent that there's always some kind of opportunity that lies, when there's all sorts of, things that are going wrong and challenges. But going back to kind of the digital media question, I think one of the hardest things for folks in the space is really how do you balance all the different areas that you can be activating, whether that's different platforms, whether that's different strategies, different media channels, the traditional ones, the new ones that seemingly come out all the time. It's not new that there's different ways that different fans consume content, interact with content. But I guess how do you go about balancing the different places that you can be to be the most effective in your job?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'd probably say you have to start a little bit with analytics. So again, going back to golf and looking at the digital product is the scoring. Scoring is the number one page that people want to go to. And then number two page is streaming. And they really they can go back and forth easily. But so if you can't give them streaming, give them scoring really good. And if you can't give them scoring, give them streaming really good. And you that those are the two biggest drivers, and those drivers are coming based on analytics. And so then what you need to do though is those are your MVPs. You can't mess up your MVPs because right now we know that those people are going to land on those two pages. And so then it's like, okay, now how do we sprinkle in the other things? And how do we even use those pages, which we know we're going to drive traffic to kind of start promoting some of those new ideas and getting people on the journey. And so the biggest thing with the digital media landscape is so much of it's the UI UX and how do you get people into something, and it's got to be intuitive. We don't like it when we're on an app and we keep clicking a button and we're like, where is this? And it doesn't matter that it's there. It has to be dummy proof for us. And the same thing is true in digital media, whether or not, obviously many of us are building products, but it needs to be intuitive and we need to be giving the user what they want. And then if they don't know they want it, we need to make sure that we're making that second journey as seamless as possible with no friction. So now something new that they've never seen before is frictionless, and they go into it and they go, now this is cool. And now I don't want to live without it. And so it's really, I think, blending the two with as least amount of friction as possible to get someone into something that they're not familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
I think from the social media side of things and going where the people are, we're still always going to be active in the big three, and that's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, because we know that's where our bigger audiences are. But on top of that, it's knowing which audiences are on which platforms and what to post that is going to elicit the most engagement. And so those strategies are things we do with every day, and the tone of each platform. We know Instagram is going to skew younger. And so sharing more content on there that can be more, hopefully more conversational in the comments there, people jump in and whatnot. Twitter is a giant conversation, and video on Twitter is the most engaging content that they've told people that you can post. So yeah, we're going to put a lot of video out there. And then Facebook, a lot of your news stories and stuff that you want people to consume on Facebook, your older audience is still clicking. It's amazing. Like, I'll take our schedule release, for instance. We brainstormed how we wanted to release it on all the 3 platforms. But like Facebook's like, I can just put a link to the website back to it. And it's insane how many people will just click it and go and consume it that way, instead of not really caring that there's like a fancy video or anything like that. It's like, what your audience wants, so give them what they want. And when it comes to those sorts of things, don't try to do anything that's going to cause them to go away from you to do it. Another example, we made it look kind of fancy on our football account, made a thread with each game and whatnot. From the Knights account, we did a text schedule, because we saw what happened was people from other media entities would just throw up the schedule in a text form, and it would get tons of engagement. I'm like, all right, if they're going to do that, I'll let the football account put out the cool looking stuff. And then the Knights account just puts out the text one that fans can just read through quickly and move on. And it got great engagement. So just taking what you learn and applying them.
Absolutely. And I love that you get creative with content. I was showing as you were going through that in terms of some of the posts. Oh, wrong way. Look at me learning as I go here. But this is where you did some posts around UCF night dogs. Yes. Which so tell us a little about this one. Where did this idea generate from? And
is that the one that last week?
Yeah. This is very recent. Yeah.
So Courtney Peter is our assistant director of #content, and she texted me because we're all bummed. It was last Thursday when everything got canceled, and so she just sends me the text. All right, Nation, you know what to do. Send us all your pet pics. I'm like, yeah, go for it. I mean, people are feeling down. They all also love to show off their animals. Yeah. And it's a thread that people are going to smile scrolling through, or a post when we repurpose it on Instagram or on Facebook. So I think we got well over 250 animals in that thread on Twitter, and then she repurposed from that. So her UCF animal picture bank must be extremely large on her phone that we can utilize at any time. But it's just knowing the moment, and people are bummed, and it's nothing that's going to put yourself out there in a way in this climate that's going to probably be met with dismay.
Yeah, no, I think that was a great call, and it's incredible. That post had almost double the amount of interaction than any other posts around the last couple of weeks, and I think you hit the nail on the head. People just needed an outlet, something to share together as a community. So I really love that, Eric. So great job to the team.
Cool.
Yeah, from from the Adidas side, I think building off what Eric and Kara said, something that we keep top of mind is it's a little internal tagline, but it's distribution before production. And Eric talked about that is each platform, and the content that lives there, should have purpose, and it shouldn't be kind of a spread approach where everything is treated the same. For us, Instagram is a little bit more diverse in how the content can come to life, whether that's long form storytelling, kind of behind the scenes into some of our events. But of course, as Adidas, we sell products. So big shoe in the frame, product catalogs, and Instagram shopping has kind of evolved over the last, I would say, over the last 12 months or so. And it's something that we've learned, and Kara talked about the importance of analytics and understanding the metrics. Like, if we don't tag a product, our engagements are going to go down. The algorithm will not be happy if we don't tag our products. So that's something that we've been learning and approaching in a different way over the last 6 to 12 months. Twitter for us is a little bit more of a reactive space, an opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with our fans and our followers. YouTube is something that we've been kind of investing in a little bit more over the last 6 months. We've been working with, and maybe some folks in the class are familiar with this publisher, but we've been working with the Players Tribune on kind of building some long-form storytelling pieces that highlight what makes our athletes different, what are their journeys to to where they've landed, and what do they represent, what are they about. And so we've had some really strong success there with Damian Lillard of the Portland Trail Blazers and Donovan Mitchell leading the way back in July. And then, of course, our athlete channels. I know that Eric has kind of helped build a really, really impactful and engaging program with our former student athletes and alumni, especially on the football field. And the athlete channels, they really provide an authentic voice for us as a brand. Again, you don't always want players and athletes or influencers to be a walking billboard where it feels forced.
Mm-hmm.
What role do their channels play in our storytelling on social is super important.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing that I'll talk about, and I think in marketing and especially in social, we're constantly fighting for your attention. And how do we show up on your phone if you don't follow Adidas Hoops, or if you don't follow UCF football? And for us, it's been leaning into these more visible moments, and like when players walk into a game, it's something that we've really built into over the last 2.5 seasons. And just building on something, that we know our fans and media are really excited about. What is Damian Lillard wearing? Oh man, wait, why is he carrying in a leg lamp from the Christmas Story, on Christmas Day last season? I think our players have a lot of fun and trying different things. And, we've had a lot of success because of their willingness to participate in their excitement, to bring our stories to life in a different way and to show up on your phone in a different way. So distribution before production, if you had one takeaway, that's one of the biggest ones for us.
Yeah. Joe, you brought up, just relationships. You brought up in terms of your athletes, brand ambassadors, and, you also have a lot of partnerships in digital. So the next question is going to be, how do you work with your digital partners, relationships, athletes, and brand ambassadors?
There's talent and there's a lot of key figures. I guess the one example I would give is just, outside of my specific world, but Rory McIlroy has helped kind of launch and sponsor Golf Pass, which is all within Golf Channel and Golf Now. And I mean, that kind of name attached to a brand is just incredible. And Rory is just a class act, athlete. It's amazing. And he came in and did a video at the call center recently and literally took a call from the first Golf Pass member ever. And so it's just, I'm not an expert by any means in talent and managing talent. But I think there are some nuances you have to sometimes jump, kind of hoops you have to jump, but there are times where you hit the jackpot with finding the right talent that's easy to work with and they support your brand. And it's important to latch onto that and really build a good relationship. I mean, I think at the end of the day, while they're famous and they're awesome and their face is worth a lot of money, they're still a person. And so you build relationships with them and you hit home with the things that matter. And so I think that's important in the digital aspect, is that when you're asking talent or people and athletes to come to the table with something, ask them to come to the table with something that actually matters to them, because they're going to have more buy-in that way. And when you have buy-in, it's just a whole different type of product.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a passion project of mine. years ago, I was wondering how we could get content into our alumni's hands, especially those who are playing in the NFL, because tying that, you saw when we would put out stuff from our main channels about those athletes making plays on Sundays, how much engagement it got. And we were I was lucky enough to find Blake Lawrence, who's the CEO of Open Doors, and we got on board with them in 2016 and started out with getting our alumni on there and getting them content, and it worked really well. And then it evolved to administration. So I got Danny White, our AD, on there, and was able to get more content into his hands to put onto his feeds because people were engaging with him at incredibly high rates, and they still do. And then getting our coaches on there. Scott Frost at the time was on there, and then Josh Heupel is now. And then current student athletes. The first student athlete we got on there was Shaquem Griffin, and made an MTV Cribs for Shaquem Griffin because he stayed at the Wayne Dench Center where during football training camp, he talked to the media and said, "I'm sleeping in the Dench during all camp." And I'm like, oh, this is too good not to do something about. And so our awesome student at the time, Leland Dutcher, he followed him and did the video, and that we put it out through his account, and it crushed. And it's just like the mindset shift of putting content that should be in people's hands and let it get out there instead of it always coming from our main channel so that it gets the highest engagement. Plus, you're also reaching different audiences. All the football players have a lot different audiences than just the football account. That could be other potential recruits who would want to see who see what's going on at UCF with their friend and be like, wow, that looks like a pretty awesome opportunity there. They're killing it there. It looks like a good time and a great place to play. And those sort of things happen more because you're reaching more broader audiences, and then you're deepening the connections between the student athletes and the fan bases. And it just goes a long way. So it's incredibly important to have those great brand ambassadors, and I'm lucky to work with a ton of them at UCF and our student athletes, and then see them go on to their professional lives, whether that be just a job like we have or playing the pros. And so it's something that we will continue to evolve, and I look forward to seeing it evolve.
Yeah, I mean, for us with Adidas basketball and looking at our athletes first, it's open communication always. Being transparent with them. Planning is so important, and the opportunity to, have our athletes, be included outside of just, the creation of the products that they wear on court or off the court, but the opportunity to be a part of our marketing conversations. It's so important to build, trust and strong relationships with our, Adidas athlete managers and their agents, whether that be over monthly calls or weekly group texts. Having that communication is so important. And, as I mentioned for, stunts like a tunnel entrance, having buy-in from the athlete from the beginning, or, if we want to, request a little bit of deeper access, to bring a story to life, it's working with the athletes and their families. So they feel like they're a part of the process. And, again, they're not being mandated to do something. We really want them to be a part of the process. And when you look at ambassadors, for us, on-court visibility and earned coverage is so important. When you see players on the court in the NBA or the WNBA, there's an immediate association that they're a Nike athlete because of the swoosh that you see, on the uniforms that they're wearing. So by partnering with teams like the Portland Trail Blazers and making sure that whatever Damian Lillard's wearing on court is being affiliated and associated with Adidas, and it's just so important to have that communication and that trust. When you look at media partners like Bleacher Report and their multiple channels like House of Highlights or BR Kicks, by providing them with exclusive coverage of product, before it comes out, or giving them a heads up on a tunnel stunt, whatever it may be. Again, just building that trust and allowing your partners to feel like they're a part of the process is so important. And continuing to drive coverage and conversation, on social and, these digital platforms.
Yeah, those are great answers. I mean, there's so many, what it really comes down to is the right kind of partnerships can really turbocharge what you're doing. And I think that's what I got from all those. those answers, and it's great stuff. But I guess we're kind of wrapping up, but I want to ask one more question. This is a kind of a current topic that's come up. And, one of the things I think about digital is it allows you to serve different messages to different constituents. It's not a one size fits all thing by any stretch, but, I think one of the things that I'm hearing people talk about is how do we engage women's sports fans, and how do we do it in a way that's one that's meaningful, but one that's also that's constructive and unique. But I guess I'd start with Kara. What do you think? What are your companies doing to engage women?
I think there's even two ways you can kind of look at that question. What are we doing to engage student athletes? But then even the other side is, what are we doing to not student athletes, sorry, female athletes, and what are we doing even just to engage, females in the sports industry? And so, and from our perspective, the biggest thing, like NBCU ultimately is what Golf Channel's under, Golf Now is under, and we did a major push about a year and a half ago of not just diversity and hiring kind of like a really diverse candidate slate, but also a really big push in hiring women. And specifically in the sports world. And so there's also this Comcast technology group above NBCU. And now I'm teaching you like a whole ecosystem of Golf Channel, but above NBCU is actually Comcast, which is what we call our granddad. But Comcast has like a woman in tech, and there's a Slack channel, and there's like a monthly meeting. And it really is like, hey, we have a lot of women in tech. And it's because we've done a really good job as NBC to really put an emphasis on hiring females. And I think just a cool success story is our team. Our team is a team of 6. It's a brand new team. It formed out of the new digital deal and infrastructure that we built within PGA of America and European Tour. And of our team of 6, 4 of us are females, which is pretty incredible. And so I think that, it starts there sometimes at the workplace, is that like somebody, it's a push from HR, it's a push from leaders. And NBCU did a really cool campaign around like hiring females, and they went to all the different executives and they essentially asked them like, what do you want your daughter to be when they grow up? And it really helped kind of switch the landscape of you want your daughter to be able to accomplish all of her dreams no matter what they are. So let's make sure that we're removing the barriers right now as a company, so that the females in the world today are setting the way and the trend, so that your daughter has those barriers removed by the time they're entering the workforce. So I think it's a really powerful campaign that has dramatically increased our diversity from a woman's perspective and women in sports, given we're a sports media company.
I love hearing that. As a stepdad to 2 wonderful girls, 10 and 7, it's just so awesome to hear. So Thank you for sharing that, Kara.
Yeah.
Mark, can you repeat the question for me so I can hear that again?
Well, I guess for your standpoint, you're serving men's and women's sports, and I think we've realized there's more the fan base at large, as well as your student athletes are men and women. But is there anything specific that you do, or feel like you can do, the industry can do better to engage with women?
Yeah, I think it's giving more equal treatment to these sports. I think we try to do it on our end when it comes to creating content, especially from our main athletics accounts. That athletics account is kind of a cheerleader for all of our sports teams. So especially this time of year, we're ramping into it, but showing off top plays across the weekend from all of our sports. And that's going to include our women's sports, because they're crushing it. Our women's soccer program is probably our most successful program at UCF Athletics. And, they're consistently in the NCAA tournament and making runs, and volleyball coming off of back-to-back conference championships. Our women's basketball team, who knows, we'll never know if they were going to be on the bubble or not this past year, but has made, 4 straight 20-plus win seasons. So it's about promoting their accomplishments on the court, but also and on the field, but also having events like taking part fully in National Girls, Women's, and Sports Day, and going all in, not doing just something like to check a box. But I really applaud Danny White, because that's a a passion project of his that we need to take part in each and every year and do it to the nine. So there's a breakfast, and then it's on us to tell the story. Courtney Peter, like I've talked about, our assistant director, she does a great job of putting content together and putting together written form pieces, as well as sharing out our highlights and working with our sports information directors to make sure that we're putting out the best stuff to showcase how awesome our student athletes as a whole, men and women, are. But it comes out 50-50 a lot of times with our Olympic sports with their dominance on the field too.
Yeah, and Joey, how about you and Adidas?
Yeah, so for us, we approach it in two different ways. One at the professional level, and the second at the grassroots level. And when I started in 2015, Candace Parker, was the only female athlete in our basketball roster. So at the start of 2016, we started to expand that with some rookies, Mariah Jefferson and Morgan Tuck out of UConn, and Amani McGee Stafford with Texas. And since that time, we've expanded our roster to 13 WNBA athletes, including Shanae Agumake, who is a sportscaster, with ESPN. Her older sister, Nneka Agumake, who is the president of the Players Union, and has really been the leader and at the forefront of the most recent CBA for the WNBA and pushing for equal pay. And when you begin to expand the roster, it allows for, inclusion of female athletes in our campaigns, and ones that are recognizable and that can connect with the younger audience. And when speaking of the younger audience, in 2017, we introduced a new platform, a new grassroots platform called Legacy. And that platform serves more than 800 students in Los Angeles, New York City, and most recently Chicago. And it's built to unite, empower, and inspire our next generation of high school student athletes that are, underrepresented and underserved. And for us as a brand, historically, when we go into a city for an event like All-Star Weekend, we pop up, we take over a space, and we leave. But for us, like I said, beginning in 2017, we wanted to approach it in a different way. And for us, that was, really establishing a long-term commitment to providing resources for both training and education, but also delivering unique access to our Adidas brands, whether that's our athletes or entertainers. Most recently in Chicago for All-Star Weekend, we brought out folks like Shanae and Candace Parker, but also Jonah Hill, for what we described as the world's best career day, and just kind of approaching activation and events in a different way. And what's been so special about our Legacy program is that it's equally represented for both boys and girls programs, where I think, again, historically in sponsorship of high school sports, you follow the elite boys teams. And for us, we want to try to approach that in a different way. And even though we've begun those things in 2016, still a work in progress. Each year, this year will be the third annual, if we're able to. We know coronavirus may postpone it, but over the last 3 years, we've hosted a player summit, a women's summit, where our WNBA players will come out and we'll talk about issues within the sport and opportunities to kind of elevate and, to Kara's point, break down barriers and to elevate their game. So it's been a really exciting time, and I think Adidas has done a great job of engaging not just professional athletes, at the women's level, but also our high school athletes and our consumers.
Yeah, it's been really nice to see things really doors open, and there's been a lot of pioneers over the last many years. Women that have really just opened up doors for young women today, and there's organizations like WISE, Women in Sports and Entertainment, and I appreciate the three of you sharing what each of your organizations are doing to promote opportunities and engage women into sports and entertainment and products. Well, that wraps up all of our questions for tonight. And again, I can't thank the three of you enough. So Kara, Eric, Joey, thank you so much for joining us for this segment of Sport Media and Tech. the podcast. And Mark, thank you for co-moderating tonight. And any final words, any final brief words for the students before we say goodbye?
Have fun, do what you love, and don't be afraid to work hard.
Love it.
Yeah, make the most of this time you have right now. Stay on top of things the best you can. Network, especially you seniors. I know it's tough. I can only imagine. There's peaks and valleys, and there's gonna be highs and lows. But you're gonna be all right. And utilize Keel. He's a great resource, and so many others that he's brought into your classroom, and that he's gonna give you to the rest of the semester. So use those resources wisely.
And just just to finish off from my side, I think for myself, graduating from UCF in 2015 and having the opportunity to be a part of the sport business program, as a minor, I think when you look at Doc and Professor B, I don't know if all of you have had the opportunity to to learn from those guys, but if you learn a couple things, it's always continue to hustle, like Eric mentioned earlier, be persistent, work hard. Like Kara said, you got to have that tenacity. And the final thing, especially right now, I think for all of us in the sports industry, and Doc and Professor B talk about this all the time, is embracing uncertainty, embracing ambiguity, and just continuing to work hard and just push.
And that's a wrap. Thank you for tuning in to Sport Media and Tech. Join us next time to discuss engaging communities with Amber J. Hudson from Major League Baseball, Gareth Hill from the International Federation of Basketball, FIBA, and Gene Martin from the Orlando Magic.